Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. In the comics, TV, and movies, we will go from the Earth 616 to the Mojoverse to the TVA in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm the man without fear, Chris.
I'm your friendly neighborhood Brent.
Alliance Assemble. Volume 175. And Trailer Palooza continues, Brent.
It does. I thought of the same thing. I thought of that exact same thing. Trailer Palooza for sure.
Yeah, it's Trailer Palooza Part 2. So, how has your week been, Brent?
It's been good. Nothing too eventful other than today, kind of a little bit of last minute for reasons why, but it ended up happening where I went to see the Spider-Man exhibit that's at Kansas City's Union Station today. So we'll talk about that more later. But that was a lot of fun. Some really cool stuff there. But other than that, just another week.
Yeah, this is got back from vacation. It was a long trip, but finally, well, I won't call it vacation. It's visiting family at that point. It's a little different. a little different.
No
Love my family. It's just it necessarily everyone's definition of vacation is different, but visiting family, you love it, but it's not necessarily the vacation.
Amen.
Yep. But I've always enjoyed meeting and enjoying my relatives on my wife's side and my side. So it was good seeing them. I hadn't seen my side of the family since 2019, so it had been a couple of years. So been a lot of fun had, but glad to be home. Staff came back to my school yesterday, so it's Thursday, but Wednesday they came back. So kids come back a week from today. So when we record next week, we'll see how tired Chris is already after one day.
Yeah, you're going to be exhausted. Let's call it how it is. Look for next week's episode to be a little bit shorter.
I wouldn't go that far, but we'll see. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to breaking down this Loki trailer. We've got some interesting news to talk about this week. So before we do all that fun stuff, let us get the network plugs out of the way. We are part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network with 8 shows covering the wide range of geek and nerdom. To see the full schedule, check out the show notes below and subscribe to the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUA Pod Network so you know when all the shows drop. We also have a Patreon, so if you want to throw a couple of shekels our way, we've got 2 tiers. Our dollar tiers are tip jar to say, hey, you think we're doing a good job? And then we've got our $5 tier with ad-free episodes, early access episodes, and Patreon-exclusive shows, including our show, We Can Watch This All Day, the Marvel Alliance MCU Rewatch. We've got 19 episodes up there, including our most recent one, Doctor Strange, that has dropped. So patrons, as always, we can't do this without your support. Hope you're enjoying all that content. We've got the DC Alliance guys doing their DC through the years and a ton of backlog content that you are hopefully enjoying. If you're not a member of our Patreon, go to www.patreon.com/GUA network to catch and join all our GUA patrons. And if you can't join us on Patreon, we totally understand. But if you can take 30 to 90 seconds and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast, we greatly appreciate that. Helps us get on the algorithm. And last but certainly not least, we want to thank our official sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com, for your omnibus hardcover collected edition needs. JP and the crew at OPB have got it going on with excellent customer service, immaculate packaging, ships around the world. Brent makes him happy when he sees anything Clone Saga.
Every time. It's so beautiful.
Final volume of the reprint of the main Clone Saga is coming back into print.
Those covers, both of those covers, I love those covers both so much.
Yep, this was the first time a direct market cover, so that would be this one with both of them fighting. And I believe we've got the Death of Ultimate Spider-Man coming back into print into 2 covers at that point. Thunderbolts Red is putting into an Omni, and yeah, so a lot of great stuff coming in there. So use that code MARVELGUA at checkout to get $2 off every single order, and you can use it a limited amount of times. And we want to thank them for being our official sponsor. All right, well, want to give a quick, before we get into everything, I want to plug, I'd recently been on my friend Jess's YouTube show, OmniDog's Vault, so check out his channel. I was recently on his show, and one of the viewers on it had asked me if I would like to read his self-produced comic. And as I pull it up on screen, it is called Bang the Ballad Tiger. It is written, everything, the whole shebang, produced everything by Great House. That is the author's name. And as I showcased some of the art, I kind of told him he's got a very much a Mike Mignola kind of feel to his art style. If you're a fan of Hellboy, that kind of gives you an idea of what it is as I'm kind of showcasing it. It is a very interesting tale of a woman by the name of Blade who is at one point basically sent into exile for breaking one of the key laws of the city at that point, and it's basically her journey dealing with her exile as she goes and then comes back for revenge at that point. So it's everything. It is a very epic tale. As you see, there's 410 pages that have been done so far with it. If you want to purchase the book at that point, you can follow him on Instagram at Great House Art, and you can go to purchase the book. It's $16. You can go to greathouse.bigcartel.com and you can purchase it for $16. So 410 pages, $16 for a digital comic. That's really a good deal at that point for some great art. And again, it's channeling all the stuff from, the hero's journey. Really loved it. Wanted to give it a shout out at that point again. Bang, The Ballad of the Tiger by Great House. Check it out. Hopefully you do, because again, it was a lot of fun to read. So check that out.
Awesome. I'm digging that art style. It looks really, really nice art there.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right. So as I get back the screens and everything, let me remove that. All right. Okay. So as you can tell by the background, if you're watching on YouTube at that point, and we said it at the beginning, we had gotten hints of the possible first trailer for Loki season 2 to drop on Monday, and as hinted at, we did get that trailer. And even though directors, showrunners have all changed over from the original group, this is channeling the vibes of season 1 a lot.
Absolutely. They kept the feel of it for sure. Like this wasn't like, put it in comic terms where you have a new artist come on and it looks and feels just completely different. No, this is two similar artists doing their thing. And it does. There's some stuff that does look newer and whatnot, but we're going to look at Miss Minutes. That's definitely a different take, let's say. But in general, like this feels very much like a good visual continuation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely got that feel of what we, at least the aesthetic, the style, everything that we kind of saw about what was going on with Loki season 1, and just it felt good. In fact, the back and forth between Loki and Mobius felt like they hadn't missed a beat. In the sense of the filming and everything like that, and our first introduction to Ki-Hui Kwan's character. I'm just very excited. But what do you say, Brent? You want to start getting into this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So as always, listeners, we'll be minimizing our screen and no sound, but we'll be kind of talking through it. So as the trailer opens, we get Loki and Mobius visiting Ki-Hui Kwan's character, who's named O.B. And what I want to kind of look at is that, as O.B. kind of descends down from wherever he's at, he obviously recognizes Mobius at that point, but look at everything around him. Mm-hmm. It's not just a bunch of junk. He looks, I want to say O.B., who his name is the full name of his Ouroboros. He looks to be an inventor for the TVA.
Yeah, and he clearly has some sort of knowledge, like he's been there for a while, because they're about to ask him about time slipping, and he says he's seen it before. They go to him asking for knowledge on this kind of thing. I'm really curious about this guy.
Yeah, and Ouroboros, his name comes from mythology, and if you look it up, it's a snake that eats his own tail, which basically means self-destruction. Which, as we go through the trailer, we can see the TVA is very much hurtling towards self-destruction. And it's going to be very interesting kind of seeing, and this is where we see Loki Mobius says, that's what's happening. And Obi says, wow, time slipping.
Do you agree or disagree, or what do you think about the people who say the time slipping looks similar to the glitching that we saw in the Spider-Verse movies?
I can easily see that. What I will also equate it to MCU wise is very similar to how
Doctor
Scott was.
Strange.
No, how Scott was multiplying in Quantumania.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And he is of many timelines, and Loki is of many timelines at the same time, and he is the ultimate anomaly.
It kind of reminded me of the way Doctor Strange's head was bouncing around in Infinity War when he was looking for ways to defeat Thanos. But no, you're right. You're right about the Ant-Man comparison there for sure. And I agree with the overall idea that there is definitely a similarity there to the glitching in Spider-Verse. Obviously, it looks a little different. Clearly, it's not the exact same thing because Loki seems to have disappeared. It seems to have transported him somewhere else in time, whereas that's not what the glitching is doing in the Spider-Verse movies.
Correct. So I look at the Obi, can you fix it? He says, no, it's impossible to time slip in the TVA. But they just saw it happen. So I have a feeling like Kiwi Kwan is more than just a kind of character came out. I have a feeling as we've seen him pop up again later on, I have a feeling he's going to be very key. He's going to be a new kind of big supporting cast for season 2.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to see him in several episodes.
Mm-hmm. How about this? He ends up time slipping in front of Piranha Power Sports. And what does it have in the background, Brent?
Well, to me, that looks like a couple of jet skis, making me ask the question, is Mobius going to get that chance? Is he going to get the opportunity to fulfill that dream and ride those waves?
Or could we, when he time slips, could he be at a place where Mobius was taken from?
Ooh, maybe he's like the jet ski salesman or whatever.
Maybe he could be this guy in the background right here.
It's an interesting idea, and you gotta hope at some point before this show has run its course that he's gonna get to ride that.
Oh yeah, exactly. And so, he who remains dying has created a lot of problems for the TVA and the time stream, which could explain what's been going on with Loki. I mean, what do you feel about that?
Just about the TVA and
just his death kind of sending everything into chaos at this point.
Well, it absolutely has sent everything into chaos, and at least that's the implication they gave us at the end of season 1. Here in this, it kind of looks like they're still rolling their game. Like they're things seem to be just going like business as usual. And then I was thinking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, well, the Mobius at the end of Loki season 1 didn't seem to remember who Loki was. They didn't seem to know each other. So, and maybe in this timeline, whatever timeline Loki is currently in, maybe the TVA never did get destroyed.
And also, if you think about it, it not just gets destroyed, but like how much has changed with the effects of, wherever Sylvie kind of sent Loki to,
Exactly.
So, and he who remains, even though it no longer exists, didn't create the sacred timeline, and he didn't create the TVA. So who created it? That I would be thinking that this particular TVA, we see him we see Loki slipped into another area where he sees another Loki looking at a TVA manual.
Yeah. But, so did he slip into the past? Did he slip into the future? We don't know yet.
But that, and where I was trying to get at, like whatever TVA he's gone to, even though it shows a statue of Kang where we left off in the end of season 1, I kind of want to say that if it wasn't since He Who Remains doesn't exist anymore, who created the TVA? I would have to say the Council of Kangs created this version of the TVA.
I'm thinking on similar lines because I was thinking just the likely answer is another king. So He Who Remains may have won the multiversal war leading to Loki season 1's finale, but clearly different king is in charge right now. I presume that a different king actually won, and He Who Remains stole it from him back in what we would think of as the original timeline.
Well, always remember what He Who Remains stated. this is when it happened to Ben. He would just come back and re-exist again. Like, even if they killed him, he was inevitable. Kind of like Thanos. Like, this would all happen again.
See you in a minute, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Unlike Natasha, he does mean
it. Exactly. All right, so we get a shot of Sylvia, as we're looking at here, tearing up a vinyl record, because we kind of see, like, she didn't try to conquer any kind of timeline or anything like that. Like, she just wanted to be left alone. But her life is completely isolated. Like, we'll later see her working at a McDonald's. Like, she's basically hiding out in what looks like the era of the 80s almost.
Can you imagine Loki, God of Mischief, working at McDonald's? I did not have that on my bingo card today. Let's put it that way.
No, I did not either. And so this is kind of fascinating. One, I want to point out that we see a severed head of one of the timekeepers, which leads me to believe that Loki took him out, very similar to how they were taken out, the robots were taken out in season 1, and he's pruning this mural. And I want to kind of showcase a little bit in spotlight as we get to this point, because we see one head of a version of Kang, but there are 2 other versions. And I kind of paused right here, but what I kind of see in this is that one looks like Rama Tut, and the other one looks like a Mortis.
Yeah, so likely it's from our trio at the end of Quantumania in that credit scene.
So, like I said, it's some part of the Council of Kangs that have created this version of the TVA, and Loki's just not playing this whole thing of who could it be? He sees the myth that's going on. Only one way to find out. Okay, so we get them getting ready to go, as Mobius says, time to do some old-fashioned legwork. We get them going into a time doorway here, but it's also a different time doorway going into this. It wasn't a perfect cutaway to make you think that it was all connected in the same.
Yeah, I think that's multiple scenes.
But where they are at in this particular one is the 1901 Chicago World's Fair for some field work. And this is obviously going to tie into what we are going to see later in this trailer, but also at the end of Quantumania, where this Kang version, Victor Timely, will come into play. And just a quick reminder, Victor Timely in the comics is a lesser-known variant of Kang, and had a very short run in the comics. After he was humiliated by the Avengers and jumped into the early 1900s, he became Victor Timely, a rich inventor from Timely, Wisconsin. He founded the town, and he founded a robotic corporation that shaped the century. And he created robotic slaves that could help him in his conquest for power. He later posed as his son and grandson, and he's talking about how time shapes our lives, and there's a way for us to shape our lives. So maybe the machine he's creating can actually reshape the past instead of creating alternate timelines.
That'd be quite the twist on what we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm. So we see we see Loki displaying his powers, but as he's blasting someone, I want to say this might be Victor Timely he's blasting out.
Yeah, and I'm still wondering, of course, the big question is how much are we going to actually see him in the show? But they left him in the trailer, so we're going to see him some. So you might be onto something there.
So we see Mobius getting some pie and them having a moment. I want to say, like, them sitting down and having pie. There were a lot of moments like this in season 1, but it was kind of Mobius's way of doing an interrogation, but in a different style. So I think we're going to get a new version of the interrogation in this new version of Mobius.
Well, it's a much nicer room than where we saw a lot of the interrogations happen in the first season, for sure.
Yeah. But he does like his pie.
Absolutely.
So again, we're confirming our date. All right, so we're looking at a movie premiere for a movie called Zaniac. Now, Zaniac is a deep-cut character from the comics. He is a parasitic creature that originated from the Dark Dimension, and his name is Brad Wolfe. Now, Brad Wolfe was playing a character called Zaniac for a movie, but that's when he was infected by this parasite to become permanently Zaniac.
And dark dimension, Dormammu there, same dark dimension.
He might have come to bargain.
He might have come to bargain. Okay, okay.
All right, so we get our kind of first look at Hunter B-15. Dressed in kind of the era's garb that she's currently in the early 1900s. Now, remember, at the end of season 1, we did get her in a moment talking with Sylvie, and it almost looked like she had a realization of her truth at this point.
Yes. Question is, will she still remember that in this new timeline?
Yep. Loki's saying it's up to us. And we've got, Sylvie's kicking some butt. All right, now this is the former Citadel where He Who Remains is, that was his Citadel that was destroyed, but it's hard to see with the closed captioning, but his body is still there.
Yeah, and I can see this being like almost how the season picks up, like picking up with Sylvie, basically.
Yeah. We get Mobius in a kind of a space suit, talk about this cracked, and Obi's put some duct tape and says, yeah, you're good. Now, this is interesting. So he's going out, and this is a very interesting thing that Mobius is looking at, and he's looking like what's being thought of as called the timeline reactor. So look to be kind of addressing that where maybe this is something tied to also using Victor Timely's device to fix what's going on.
And it looks like he's just out there right in that like realm that we saw outside the Citadel at the beginning of the final episode of season 1.
Mm-hmm. Walking out there, looks like we're getting some damage to the TVA going on. And Sylvie's kind of having this realization, like she looks more scared of what's going on, and she says, we're playing gods, like she's not approving of it. And Loki is saying, well, we are gods.
We are gods.
And we're getting Loki using his kind of shadow powers to hold. This is the actor who's playing Zaniac in that timeline that they're currently in.
Yeah, I like that shot a lot with the shadows holding him right there. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and we get our kind of first looks at Ravonna Renslayer as I try to pause. There we go. So Ravona's there, looking like in a 1901 garb. She's looking at an amped up time stick.
It definitely looks similar, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ravonna, in the comics, that's the one. That's the Kang's love of his life. That every time that he's tried to be with her, she always ends up getting killed. Like like he is destined to see her die over and over and over again. But and remember in season 1, Renslayer, we had seen where she was pulled from when B-15, Hunter B-15 was looking around and saw her in a timeline, and her name was Rebecca Torment.
And she went off on her own.
Yes,
we don't
she
know
wanted to find. Like, what was she saying? I think she's saying like to find like existence or find. I can't remember.
I don't remember the exact thing, but basically she was looking for the truth of what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Miss Minutes was saying, this is what she was trying to tell her, like, this is what he says you need. The time is running out. We get another look at Hunter B-15, and oh look, there's Casey. He's not looking good for right now.
Not so much.
Yeah. All right, some more Renslayer in 1901. All right, we get our look that we saw at the end of Quantumania, this device, and Victor Timely, played by Jonathan Majors. Here we go, Miss Minutes.
Yeah, such a different look there for her.
I like it how she said, not only going to get big, but I'm going to turn into a ghost clock.
Yeah, pretty much. Going all Pac-Man on him.
And I want to point out this mural that Loki's pointing at. I mean, look at this. That's the multiversal war going on between the Kangs that's depicted.
Yeah, I'd love to get a really good shot at those.
Mm-hmm. And then we got the quote-unquote timekeepers off to the right-hand side. War is on its way. Thank you for your service. Oh, Renslayer. That looks to be she's in the void and encountering the big creature there.
Yeah, I wonder if she got pruned.
Mm-hmm. And Loki's saying, "Come on, we got the TVA looks to be in some disarray right now." Loki's
definitely a little chaotic though, because this is full on like in the TVA where they're fighting right there.
And what a great transition to the title card.
Absolutely.
We get him displaying his illusion powers right there.
There's a shot there where it looks like he's kind of in a time door that's like that one right there, like or a cube or something.
I don't think
reminded me of
that's not him.
That's not him.
No, okay. I think that's the actor who's playing that's the actor playing Zaniac.
When it was just jumping through as the collage or the montage, I thought it was him actually, and I was like, kind of reminds me of the Phantom Zone villains actually from Superman. But no, you might once it's paused and I see that you might be right about that.
Yeah, it may not be the same person, but it's definitely close to who that actor is at that point. So, but yeah, here was the first poster that was dropped. For the teaser that we knew we were kind of on the right track. I love seeing all these different versions of Loki on Miss Minutes. And then we've got after the trailer drop, this was the second poster.
Yeah, both of those are, I think, really clever. I really enjoy both of those a lot.
Absolutely. So we've got All in the Game in the chat saying production and design and score are still on point.
Agreed.
Andrew in the chat saying super excited for Loki season 2. So
absolutely.
I mean, I think, as we kind of said at the beginning of this year, like which projects were we the most excited for? This was definitely my most anticipated, just because of how amazing season 1 was.
Yeah, I mean, Loki season 1, I have it rated as the highest of my Disney Plus shows. It's my highest. And no, it's not like it's a massive jump over, say, WandaVision, but I do slot it in that number 1 spot. I really think they made something special there, and I am excited for this. I'm glad. Let's just put it this way: if we can only get one season 2 for a show, I'm glad Loki's the one that we're getting it for.
Yeah, exactly. And it just we've said it so many times before with Tom Hiddleston's character Loki, like next to Tony Stark at that point, what other character from the MCU has risen to such levels of popularity, and consistently?
It's really hard to say. The only other one I might give is Captain America.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm like, I don't know. I sure people are popular, but not to that level. That's a different level. And I might argue he's more popular than Thor is, for example.
Yeah, exactly. So I think have we heard? I think it's 6 episodes, or we're not confirmed yet.
I have not heard, but I am assuming because that's pretty much their standard MO at this point.
Yes, unless it's a comedy at that point.
Indeed.
All right. So as we know, it is October 6th, and Brent and I don't have to worry about another thing also being October 6th, as we'll get into later in the show. Some things have helped us out with making tough decisions that it really wasn't a tough decision.
Decision was not going to be tough at all, but it's, it is for the best.
So. It is as it is. But before we get into all that lovely news, at that point, we're going to take our first ad break for the evening. So as you know, listeners, these ads help keep the lights on in the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. These ads, we don't get to choose when they come on or how many times they repeat, but they do help us support our show and our network. So give you that 3 count before they come on because they could be a bit loud. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right, so next bit of information is coming out of the big rumorville. It just seems like at this point, it almost seems kind of ridiculous to talk about possible castings during the strikes that are occurring, because we know discussions are not happening between the studios and the actors at this moment.
It's all old news. At this point, all of this, and by old news, I don't mean that we've known it for a while, but I mean, when this all came out, like when this information was being reported, it was old. Like they're behind. Often scoopers are behind. We know they're behind now because nothing is happening with this stuff. And before we talk about these, I'm just going to be frank. I'm really close to that point of just who's the official people. Just who are they at this point? We've heard so many different names. Just who are they?
And yeah, I mean, at this point, also, I am not going to believe anything officially until we hear it from places like Variety, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, or until SDCC or D23 next year when we get this cast walking onto a stage officially confirming whoever is going to be at this point.
Completely agree.
And again, the source of this information came from Scooper Jeff Snyder from his Hot Mic podcast. And Jeff Snyder, very much someone of not necessarily, Brent and I necessarily are not a fan of, just of how he does things. However, I can't deny that he doesn't have his quote unquote well-placed sources. He is not anywhere close to being 100% correct, but I wouldn't call him a broken clock scooper. He's not necessarily a giant freaking robot. He's had a number of bigger scoops confirmed, but a lot of people that Brent and I do follow have been kind of confirming some of the information being correct. So again, we're taking this. I'm giving credit where credit is due with this, but I'm not necessarily subscribing that all of this is anywhere close to being true. Some of it may be, but it's a discussion point for this episode.
Absolutely. We take it with a grain of salt, and we have our salt on hand ready to go, but let's go ahead and see what he's saying.
Yep. So what he was saying today on his show is one name that we had heard before and looks to be, again, reconfirming something that Vanessa Kirby looks to be our Sue Storm for Fantastic Four at that point. So we know for a while there it was kind of going between her and Margot Robbie, according to rumors, and it looked to be supposedly that Margot Robbie had passed. But Vanessa Kirby has really hit a great kind of, she has gained a lot of, just prestige in what she's doing, besides being part of the last two Mission Impossible movies, including Dead Reckoning Part 1 this summer. She has been in the TV shows like The Crown, which I loved her in. She was young Princess Margaret. She's been in the Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw,
That's right.
family.
Don't leave family out.
Yeah, we can't leave family out. And just, she's just been slowly gaining traction, jumping from indies to some more mainstream at that point. But I mean, just on the idea of, what we've seen Sue Storm be in the comics, yeah, she fits the eye test of like, yeah, I could see you as Sue Storm. It didn't have to be someone who was white and blonde, but yes, I could totally see her pulling off. And what I have seen her in, she can bring a very strong female protagonist to this. And from what other things we're hearing and have heard for a while now, Fantastic Four Sue Storm is going to be the quote unquote main lead, focused as the main lead, not necessarily Mr. Fantastic.
She's kind of been the name I've been personally rooting for the most. I know there's been several other names, including some bigger names than her. I really like Vanessa Kirby, so I would be really excited if she was the one who ended up getting the part. So yeah, this is obviously a rumor that I like, but still acknowledging it's just a rumor.
Yep. And the next one he broke, this was kind of going back and forth of the casting of Johnny Storm. It originally got put out that Jack Quaid was going to be, based on what Snyder was hearing, that he was going to be our Johnny Storm. However, no, that is not true. Even Jack Quaid has denied it. However, Jack Quaid supposedly is cast in Fantastic Four, but not necessarily as Johnny Storm, but possibly as another part. But who has supposedly been cast as Johnny Storm is the actor Joseph Quinn. I have not been a huge follower of Stranger Things, but that's one of the things he's most recently been in. Looking at his filmography, he was in the TV miniseries Les Mis. Looking at anything else that I am not as familiar. He was in Dickinson, actually. So I have not seen Dickinson. You have, Brent. I know that for sure.
That's not the same Dickinson if you're looking at IMDb. That's like Dickensian or something.
Oh, Dickensian. Like all right, you're right. Yep, so, totally. Yeah, Dickensian.
I have seen Dickinson. I have not seen this. In fact, looking through his IMDb, I'm really not familiar with him at all.
Yeah.
He's popped up in a couple things, but this is one where for me, I just have to trust the casting process.
Yeah, if it's true. But yeah, I mean, like I said, the Jack Quaid's come out, and I was fine with if it was true at Jack. He just didn't strike me as a Johnny Storm like character, just based on what I have seen Jack Quaid in. But like I said, Jack Quaid's just totally denied he's even in Fantastic Four. So again, we're not saying this is all true, but we'll just have to see. Our next supposed cast member of this is Ebon Moss Bacharach. He is someone I've been more recently kind of seeing him in, namely in The Bear, which is on my to-do list.
Yeah, same here. We've talked about it. We haven't started it. No spoilers, please.
Yep. Andor, he was in it, and going down some of the other lists. See, he was in The Punisher.
Yeah, David Lieberman, Micro himself, absolutely, where I think
Micro.
he did a great job. He was in the new Jennifer Lawrence movie, No Hard Feelings, which is pretty funny. I saw it.
Okay.
And he's funny in it.
Yeah, so he to me is like, okay, I recognize, and I really, when I see it, oh yeah, you're right, he was John Quincy Adams in John Adams' HBO miniseries. So the rumor has it that he has been cast as the Silver Surfer.
I could see it. I could, like, visually and stuff. I could see him playing that part. And yes, he can do goofy things like what he did in No Hard Feelings with Jennifer Lawrence, but he can do more serious things like what we saw in The Punisher and Andor. I think this would lend itself to a more serious side of that, but I like him a lot. I've liked him in everything I've seen him in, and so this is, again, it's one, like Vanessa Kirby. It's one of those rumors I hope is true. Unlike Vanessa Kirby, I had never once considered his name before seeing this rumor for this part.
Yeah.
I never once thought about it, but I like the casting for it.
And before he was even tied to something at that point when it said like he has supposedly been cast in the movie, my first thought in the group chat was like, could he be our Victor Von Doom, just based on kind of the like how he, looks in that sense? Because I wouldn't put him as the ever-loving blue-eyed thing.
No.
But speaking of the ever-loving blue-eyed thing, apparently, according to Snyder, Marvel wants, and quote, a fat white guy to play the Thing. And I was like, this is where I think All in the Game said it best, obnoxious and abrasive. I have a hard time necessarily thinking like that's the quote we pull.
Well, the thing is, I think it's hard to say. Is that Snyder saying a fat white guy? Or is Snyder saying Marvel said a fat white guy?
I think he's saying Marvel wants, and we quote, a fat white guy.
Yeah, that just feels like paraphrasing to me, but yeah. I'm not really surprised, but anybody could do that part. It's going to be all CG after the first 20 minutes of the first movie.
True. Even if we get some of these, we've got Vanessa Kirby, we've got Joseph Quinn, so if anything to be believed from the supposed quote, a fat white guy, so we've got 3 out of the 4 main Fantastic Four as white males and female. Do we even say that Reed Richards is going to be a person of color?
I hope so. I feel like that's important. As we've said before, representation matters.
Mm-hmm. And we're saying like if we're going to cast a person of color, cast a person of color, not just to cast a person of color, cast a great actor to give them that opportunity to give us a version of Reed Richards that we have not seen before. And I'm not even talking about skin color. I'm just talking about acting ability.
It passes the only test I care about. Is race an integral part of who he is?
Yes.
And does he pass that test? He does, because it doesn't matter what race Reed Richards is. That's the test you got to pass. So yes, by all means, pass a person of color.
And it really doesn't matter for race for any of the main Fantastic Four. It absolutely
I mean,
doesn't.
I'd like to see the Thing be somebody Jewish, but
yeah, okay, true.
But other than that, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. The other thing we've heard that he's quote unquote reconfirming is Galactus is going to be the main villain of Fantastic Four. We had heard months ago that supposedly Antonio Banderas is the rumored front runner to play Galactus.
And that's totally fine. Just give me a good splash page looking shot.
Totally. Yep. We got to get those big splash pages on the big screen at that point. But I mentioned this in the chat. I'm saying, okay, then we now have 2 recent quote unquote Marvel antagonists / villains be of Hispanic descent.
Yeah.
So, just putting it out there saying, all right, we got to be careful with, again, representation matters, but also with representation matters, let's not start pigeonholing,
Yes, I think
casting to that, because I'm not saying I believe it. I'm just saying, like, we have seen this kind of people start picking up, oh, Marvel's only doing this. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they got to be careful with what they do and what they're putting out there.
Yeah,
we want them.
I think that's a really good point to make and a good observation to make about this, for sure.
But again, Antonio Banderas, love him as an actor. It would be very cool to hear. He's not the person I would think when I hear Galactus. That's not the voice I hear. But in the things I have seen him in being kind of a sinister, like, booming villain at that point, yeah, I think Antonio Banderas could do it.
I'm open to it. To it. He's maybe not at the top of my list, but I'm definitely open to it.
All in the Game saying, I don't think Marvel wants that corner of the internet coming for them if they cast Dev Patel or Raul Coley as Reed, for example. You know what? My big casting for Reed has been Dev Patel for a while. I'm really hoping for that. But I won't be disappointed if it's not. But I want it to be, again, let's focus on the best casting we can get. And again, as always, representation matters. Let's cast. If we're going to do that for Reed, let's swing for the fences on that one.
Agreed.
Oh, here's a good one. He says, I can hear Javier Bardem. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. Julio Zapata said, I kind of like Ryan North to take Susan Storm in the comics. Interesting. Like I said, I have not been a huge follower of Fantastic Four. I've been reading the recent run, but yeah, you're right. I could see that. Yeah, you're right. Sue Storm has definitely been getting a better view of what he's been doing in the comics. So, but in this sense, we're gonna see if this pans out. Nothing, obviously. Again, no one is talking to these actors. This is something that supposedly, I guess, Snyder was sitting on for a while, and in a slow news week, needs to get the clicks to go to him. Well, guess what? He was successful.
There you go.
Can't deny it, but all right. So our last news story for the evening is, guess what, guys, ladies and gents, we've got more delays.
That's okay. Well, they need to right now, frankly.
Exactly. So Sony makes wholesale release changes due to the SAG-AFTRA and WGA strikes. Now, Sony, this is our first major studio making wholesale switches in their release schedule as a result of the strikes that are going on. So this is coming from The Hollywood Reporter, making a number of changes. The first huge one is Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse is now taken off the spring 2024 slate, which we both kind of figured at this point when no recordings being happening on any of the voice acting.
And the animator said that the animation is nowhere near close to being ready. So yeah. Good. Give the people time to both have a life and make the movie. I will wait. If it takes 5 more years, 7 more years, well, I will wait for it.
Yep, I could easily see us not seeing this movie until 2026. I could possibly see that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's feasible.
Kraven the Hunter.
Whatever.
Yeah, or AKA the origin of Catman in the MCU, is moving from October 6th of this year to August 30th of 2024. So they're aiming to close out summer of next year.
Sony does huge jump.
It is. Sony does not want to release the R-rated action film without a full marketing and publicity push that revolves around the cast of this. Makes sense, but they've already got one trailer out, so I mean, I'm happy to wait. It doesn't interfere with our Loki watch. So
exactly.
Get ready for this as I'm wearing my Venom shirt. The third Venom movie will go out, on July 12th, 2024. The studio was already holding that date for an untitled film, and picks up again with Tom Hardy taking on the character. And he is writing this with longtime writing partner Kelly Marcel and who is also stepping into the director's chair.
Yeah,
it was getting ready or starting production this month in Spain, but it had shut down as the strike came underway.
They all, at this point, yes, pushing them back is the responsible thing to do.
It is.
I'm totally fine with this. I think more projects should probably be pushed back.
Yes, and as I put up the hashtag, yes, hashtag Madam Web is the blueprint. Madam Web actually got a increase, like a moving up. It moved up in its release.
2 days.
2 days to Valentine's Day from February 16th. So on Valentine's Day, you know where Brent and I are going to be.
Possibly.
But again, we we'll bring our wives. Say, come on, Madam Web is the blueprint, and you say that to Jen, as I'll say to Aaron. They'll look at us like, what are you talking about?
It actually would not be the first time I saw a comic book movie on Valentine's Day with a date. Just
okay. Now we need. What was that movie?
Daredevil.
You're right. Good. I'm glad. I was saying, please tell me it's Daredevil, because that's what I saw.
Absolutely, it was Daredevil.
I had no date. I just went to Daredevil.
There you go.
I could say Jennifer Garner was my date in that sense.
You'd be lying, but you can say it.
Am I though? Am I? She was in the movie, but yes. So so that's kind of the big, like, Marvel side. There were more movies on Sony side that got delayed on this, but this is all that kind of affects this show. If the strike, as I said before, if the strike goes deep into the fall, we're gonna see more of this. And I would like to say, and I would really believe, what's going to happen with the Marvels is going to really depend on what Warner Brothers does with Dune Part 2. Warner Brothers has supposedly been holding that firm that they're going to keep Dune there. So I would say Marvel, that is not something that you already don't have the IMAX screens for 5 weeks.
I'll comment on that in a little bit.
Yeah, you already don't have the IMAX screens. You need this cast to go out there and sell this movie, because just on the name alone, this is not $1 billion movie. Just you can quote unquote ride a coattails. You have no end game to base it off. So saying you have to see this before end game. This cast is going to help sell this movie. Now, will it get huge numbers just because of the cast? No, but without them, it's not going to help.
Well, like I said, we'll touch on this again in a little bit when we get to Fact or Fiction.
All right. I look forward to that. But yeah, so that is all the news this week. And we're going to take our final ad break for the evening before we get into listener feedback, Fact or Fictions, Comic Book Club, all that fun stuff. So listeners, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose when the ads come on. They could be a bit loud. Give it that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. So, all right, let us get into our questions for this week. We got a bunch of them. You put up the Spidey signal, and people came coming this week.
From S. Bubs, do you think Loki Season 2 will be the second biggest Disney Plus premiere behind Loki Season 1? Or do you think it'll be lower than that? It's hard to say. Basically, I know that the trailer did great numbers. It was one of the highest rated Disney Plus trailers they've had.
80 million.
That's the number I saw. That said, second highest premiere behind Loki Season 1. On one hand, there's a lot more subscribers now than there were back when Loki Season 1 premiered. On the other hand, let's call it what it is. I think people's faith in Marvel is a little shaken at a bare minimum after Secret Invasion. Obviously, there's people who were upset with Quantumania, people who didn't like She-Hulk or whatever project here. I'm going to say it's lower. I don't think it's going to premiere that high. Now, that said, if you start looking at it like over the course of how many plays does that first episode get over the course of 2 weeks or a month, it'll probably get close to that. But that first few days, no, I don't think it'll be as high.
Yeah, I agree. It's not going to be that high at that point. And again, if the strike is not over, not having the big press, not having that big press tour, which does help a lot, especially Hiddleston's charisma at that point with having the banter with Owen Wilson. Yeah, that's going to be a lot. It'll be more like, oh, wait a minute, it's back. It's going to be one of those.
Yeah. From Rich, if the strikes delays more and more movies, what Disney Plus shows would you put in theaters to give something for people to watch? So past Disney Plus shows, what do you think would be good as a effectively movie theater filler during the strikes?
Movie theater filler. Let me just take a look, because I want to give us one of yours.
Well, the first one that came to mind for me is the Falcon and Winter Soldier. Now, I
Okay.
don't necessarily automatically agree that, hey, this should have been a movie, but I do believe and agree with that it could be a movie. They could have, cut down some of the episodes and made it more of a movie itself. I do believe that. So, the Falcon and Winter Soldier is my first thought.
Yeah, I would think would be interesting to see WandaVision put into that. It would be kind of interesting just seeing because it's long, it's more than 6 episodes, but I'd find it fascinating like how they would do the transitions to make it instead of just because it's not an easy one to put together. It would be kind of interesting, kind of seeing that on screen. So maybe not that, but my other choice, as I'm kind of looking through, making sure what would be a great option. I would agree with Falcon and Winter Soldier. Just not necessarily be that, but yeah, I would even say Loki.
I think Loki could work. Again, all of them, you'd have to cut stuff out. The other one I had really thought about was Miss Marvel, especially if they, so let's say, put it out there before the Marvels movie. Like, it would just serve as good marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be. I mean, they're already putting it on TV at that point in a couple of weeks. So, but yeah, not a bad question.
Omari Daniels, looking back, would you have wanted a mid or post credit scene in Endgame, or are you fine with it as is?
I'm fine with it as is.
Yeah, we didn't get a credit scene. No, we haven't. Now there's been a few projects that haven't. We did get that clinking sound of Iron Man, making his iron, forging his iron. Mm-hmm. For the end of the multiversal saga, effectively, of course, Far From Home was an epilogue. I think it's just fine.
Yeah. It was appropriate. It was the best way to end it.
DC Outlaw. With the current reception of Phase 4 and 5 so far, do you think it's the right move for the finale to be a cameo-filled Secret Wars when many people don't care for the newly introduced characters? We have both, he says, you both, meaning Chris, you and I, have said we prefer the Disney Plus shows starring the Infinity Saga characters. The thing is, this kind of goes a couple ways. If you think people are not latching on to the new characters, bringing in cameos from the past is a good thing to do. It's a good way to drum up interest in that project. Mm-hmm. That said, part of what I feel is lacking from the new class, if you will, is number of appearances. We're only seeing them once, very few are we seeing. Yes, like, the Marvels is going to give us more of both Monica and Kamala, but they are absolutely the exception, not the rule, right? Because we haven't seen Moon Knight again. We haven't seen the Eternals again. We haven't seen Shang-Chi again. We haven't seen so many characters since. We haven't seen Kate Bishop again. So many characters have been introduced that Hawkeye would have been good as a movie. So many that we haven't seen again. And that's part of the advantage that the fewer projects in the multiversal saga had, is we were able to see several people 3, 4, 5 times before we got to the big show.
All in game saying Miss Marvel was released in theaters in Pakistan when it first debuted.
Did not know that, but that's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, I'd say it'd be kind of hard to, I know if I did say it, I'm not trying to double back at that point. Maybe the impression I gave, like, quote unquote, preferred the shows that people we had, but Brent brings up the point. If I did say that or even hinted towards that, it's because, like you said, we already have a history with them. I don't think I've disliked or and I'm not saying I disliked any of the shows, but I've said it before. Miss Marvel was an outstanding character, and how Kamala Khan was portrayed and brought to the big screen from the comics. It channeled so much of what she is in the comics. Very surprisingly, at that point, done great by Aman Vellani. Even She-Hulk was. I mean, when I was the biggest proponent of, like, when Tatiana Maslany was cast as Jennifer Walters, I was like, this is amazing. This is perfect, and she did an outstanding job for what Jennifer Walters is and channeling that in the comics. So to your point, it's we need to see more of these characters, and it goes back to, again, unfortunately, promoting what Bob Iger had said, like, they've done too much too fast. Mm-hmm. And it's not giving things time to breathe. And for us to say, where can we fit these characters we're introducing organically into the rest of the MCU? Like, we knew we had an idea that post Endgame, we were going to have to bring in new characters. We couldn't rely on the same old guard, whether they're be dead or like they have to grow. They can't just rest on the laurels. This was the risk. Has it been an immense success? No, it hasn't. But I can't say that any of these characters, in my opinion, have fallen flat that I don't want to see them again in another role.
Yelena's another one of those exceptions.
Yeah, you're right.
But for me, Shang-Chi is the worst offender of them all. He's the one I most want to see again, for sure.
Yeah, and we might not see him until a Phase 6 film.
Right, which just feels absurd.
It does.
But, okay, back to fiction.
All right, so thank you all for those questions. Really appreciate it. Those are some good. You gave us some good things to think about. All right, so Factor Fictions from last week. We will get another tease for the Young Avengers by the end of 2023 in one of the remaining MCU projects, unless they get delayed. I added that caveat when I was writing it. Fact, 83% said fact, 17% said fiction. Number 2, Loki Season 2 will show us at least one new variant of Sylvie. 79% said fact, 21% said fiction. And number 3, we will see X-23 join X-Men 97 by the end of Season 2. 47% said fact, 53% said fiction. All right, your turn this week, Brent. Hit me with them.
Well, I'm changing the order I was going to do these in just to do the Marvels one first. So to put it out there formally, knowing what we know now, and what is currently going on with the strikes and what other movies are expected to release, the Marvels will be delayed. So no hypothetical if the strike finishes before, just as of today, right now, the Marvels will be delayed. What do you think?
So you're saying you're not putting the caveat if the strike continues. You're just saying what we're facing right now.
I think the strike's going for several more months. So I do too. I think that's almost irrelevant to say because I think the strike will be continued by then.
I'm going to say it will be delayed. It's not a strong feeling at that point because what's mixing with my thing is like what they should do versus what they will do.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. I'm a fact as well, but I'm a 60% fact that they will delay, but I'm like an 80% fact that they should delay.
Now what we'll say, and I know our good buddy Travis Snell has said this before. If Dune, even though WB has said recently, like they're not moving Dune 2, if Dune Part 2 moves, I think that solidifies the Marvels is going to stay in November.
I agree because they'll get some IMAX screens in, but right now Dune has all the IMAX screens locked up for something like 5 weeks.
Yep, 5 weeks.
Which is just ridiculous because movies are not making that much money on the 5th week typically.
Nope.
But regardless, that's the deal. That's the way it is. And losing all those IMAX screens is really going to hurt the Marvels. And so much of that movie is going to be about the dynamic of that trinity of women that you got to get them out there marketing it. And I absolutely think they should wait.
Yep, I agree. It'd be the smartest decision, but they don't have us in charge, Brent.
No, which is for the most part the right thing. All right. Fury mentioned a peace summit between the Kree and the Skrulls at the end of Secret Invasion. It will be referenced in the Marvels.
Yes, it will.
I'm a fact.
I'm 100% fact. There's no that. I'd be very surprised if it's not.
Honestly, I'll be disappointed if it's not.
Yeah.
All right, and final. Loki Season 2 will feature a reference to one of the other MCU multiversal projects. No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, What If, etc.
I want it to. I really, really do. So I'm going to say fact on that one. I think that would be a big disappointment. Even if it's a throwaway line, it's still reference. It still counts. I say even we're probably going to at the very least a throwaway line.
Yeah, I think it will be something very small. I do think it'll happen. I'll give it a fact, but I don't anticipate it to be anything significant at all.
Yeah, all in the game saying only a movie like Avatar can make money on IMAX screens 5 weeks after release.
Right, which is absolutely not the norm.
Yes, exactly. People just love some Pandora. So, all right, well, I will post those Sunday afternoon, so let your voices be heard on that. And let us move into a final segment tonight. As always, Comic Book Club. Books of Doom #3. So, we last left Victor Von Doom with seeing kind of the origin of how he got scarred at that point. He was on his way, basically running away from, the American government and everything they were forcing him to do. What do you think about this issue, Brent?
I think if Marvel Studios ever wanted to do a Doctor Doom miniseries, Doctor Doom Disney Plus show, this book is what they should have just straight up adapt. Just here's your storyboards, roll with it. This book is so good, absolutely great. I love seeing the stuff with Victor going through life and like becoming the person we know he's going to become, becoming the supervillain that we know he's going to become. Almost having a chance, almost having just that little grasp at just true happiness, has a lover and a partner, and having it all ripped away from him and basically sealing him in his will in the sense that no, I am forever going to be alone because I am Doom and I can't be distracted by such pettiness.
Yeah, especially, it's very, as I said, Brubaker, very known for his kind of crime noir love of that. At that point, I love the whole idea of like the KGB being after Doom, saying, you're going to come and work for us. It's like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to work for the Americans. I don't work for you. I don't work for anyone. And he's like, oh, that's not a request. It's, oh, that's very much, it's very much out of a
It's not a request.
Yeah, it's very much out of, and I just love it how Doom basically takes care of him at that point. But just like you said, like he, when his childhood love or his young love comes back into his life, he thought she was long gone, and kind of found out like the Baron going after them, going after the family. At some point I thought, oh, she's a plant. She's just trying to, capitalize on who he is and drag him in. But ended up, no. They just kind of used her to follow to get back to him, not that she was in on the plan.
Completely agree. And I found myself wondering the whole time, is she betraying him? Is she, is she trustworthy? And I was really glad that it turns out that she also was betrayed. It's like, I didn't want to, yeah, you're Dr. Doom. You're a horrific supervillain. I'm supposed to absolutely not root for you, but damn it, I am rooting for you. So I really didn't want her to betray him.
Yeah, it was interesting just seeing her display some powers too.
The whole thing so much about this was unexpected. But for me, the thing I think the scene I absolutely liked the most was like the homeless guy who he kept trying to Otto get away from his house or his apartment. Otto turns out to be so much more than he was giving him credit for, and basically introduces him to the concept of magic and using science to understand magic.
Yeah, and just saying I was always wanting to be here to protect you, So, but yeah, like you said, at the end he's got to walk away from Valeria and just kind of, say that I'm going back and I'm going to claim what's mine at that point, but I can't have people. He almost says like, I can't allow myself happiness.
Right.
Like he absolutely will refuse it because it'll distract him from his end goal of acquiring as much power as possible.
And it did snap him out of his depression over his failure to save his mom and the scarring of his face. But so it certainly did serve a purpose towards the end goal, but ultimately he's not going to allow for that kind of distraction going forward.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, we will head to issue 4 next week at that point. I'd already closed the book. I forget, 5 issues, 6 issues.
I think it's 6.
6 issues. Okay. So after next week, we'll have to start figuring out what our choice is going to be for next comic book club. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of volume 175 for Marvel Alliance. Hope you all enjoyed that. And Brent, tell people how they can follow you.
Yeah, Brentech Prime on whatever social media site you're using. If I'm on it, that's what I'm going by.
Yeah, same here. Pretty much on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, X, formerly known as Twitter,
Mastodon, whatever.
I'm not even on that. That's the one I'm not on yet.
True.
That's the one I'm not on, and not because I'm resisting. It's just,
you're
I'm
resisting a little. It's all right.
It seems more complicated than the other ones were. So
I mean, it may not matter if Threads federates the way they say they might, then it may not matter, and you may be able to go cross-platform between Mastodon, Blue Sky, and Threads all across. So
I'll just go back to carrier pigeon, sending my musings to the sky above. How about
just write a little note, pass it in class. You work in a school, come on.
Yeah, that might get me in a little trouble there, Brent.
I didn't say to pass it to the students.
I know, but who else am I going to pass it to at that point? That's weird. All right. Well, anyways, as we say, you can follow me on Twitter at Chris Valg and all the other socials that possibly are there. Look them up. If I'm there, I'm there at that point. You can follow this podcast still on Twitter at Marvel 8 Podcast, the only place that you can follow this show, just because I can only keep up with so much with this show.
Twitter, X, whatever it's called this week.
Yeah. You can email the show at marvelalliancepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GWAPod Network. Feel free to tweet, email for modified feedback, ask questions, propose fact or fictions. DMs are open across the board. Continue to rate and review the Marvel Alliance solo feed, GWA Network feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us in the chat. Thank you all for listening. Stay safe out there, everyone. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. All right, Brent, it is your time for show and tell.
It is. So we did this a few weeks ago when you went to that Marvel exhibit, and today, like we said, I was able to go to a Spider-Man exhibit that's at Union Station in Kansas City.
Originally unplanned.
It was, yeah. Like we were absolutely going to go, but we weren't going to go yet. But it ended up being a great time. There were hardly anyone there, and it's been around for a couple months now at this point, so I'm not too surprised it wasn't packed. But I took a ton of pictures. This is just a very small sample of what I took.
So definitely go to YouTube if you're listening. Yes. Go to YouTube. Fast forward to the end of the show.
Yeah.
You can see
audio people. I'm sorry. I'll probably tweet some of this out, but I haven't yet. So this first one is just a sample. They had a whole page called Into the Spider-Verse, and it showed all kinds of different Spider-Man variants and stuff. And this one was showing Superior. And some of these screens, like the one with Superior, those screens actually changed. They were effectively TVs, and they would rotate through like 5 or 6 different characters. Others were static images, like the one of Penny Parker next to it. Let's see. They had some original art on the display. They had quite a bit of it, really. But this is just one from Spider-Man No More. I didn't take a picture of every single one. And my wife did suggest to me that because in a couple of weeks I may have a day completely to myself. And she's like, maybe you should go back and really take your time because as much as my son loved it, he was flying through that thing. And I'm like, I am taking some time. I took a lot of pictures of things so I could later come back and read them. But anyway, some little original art of Spider-Man No More. And how green was my Goblin's iconic picture right there of the Green Goblin. Absolutely love that, seeing that stuff. So cool. The Clone Saga got a call out. I was very excited to see that. Had my daughter take a picture of me with it, but this is just like so great. And honestly, I haven't even had a chance to read this yet. But I took a picture and I like zoomed in. I'm like, okay, I can read it. Perfect. Yep. Moving on.
That's kind of what I was doing when I was at the Marvel exhibit. Can I read this? Good, I'll read this later.
Yes, exactly. Miles Morales, they asked, of course, that you don't climb on the statue, but they absolutely welcomed you to stand next to him. So yes, I did get a picture of my son doing a little bit of a Miles pose, and I can absolutely report that David took his kids to see it, to see this several weeks back, and he has a similar picture of his boys as well. So pretty awesome that like such a great Miles pose. And I'm glad they did that because Miles is a huge Spider-Man at this point. He is an iconic character, and I'm glad that they gave him his due. Here we got a bust from the Venom movies, which my son, and there's glare in the picture. You do your best because they're in glass cases. My son is like, I haven't seen that. And I'm like, no, not yet. You're not ready for that one yet.
And you may not see it for a very long time, not just because you're not old enough, but because, we don't need to expose you to this.
That's right. We don't need to expose you to that. However, I have it in this photo album, but there was next to that just a huge picture of Carnage, and leave it to my kid to excitedly yell Carnage and run over to it to look at it.
No, that would be my son. Remember, my son has had 2 different options for action figures on things that he likes. He chose Zurg, and then on our last Disney trip, Aaron made the statement, when he chooses his one thing from the parks at that point, watch it be Thanos. Yep, he chose Thanos. I tried to get him to choose Black Panther. Nope, he wanted Thanos.
So this Thanos, of course. This is the Green Goblin suit from the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Oh wow, that is
And
cool.
I was surprised to see that one at first, but they truly did like represent. Other than I didn't, and I may have just missed it, but I didn't notice anything from Nicholas Hammond's Spider-Man. So I may have missed that one, but it seems like they're honoring all the other ones. Here, of course, we got the Power Ranger Green Goblin mask from Spider-Man 1.
Yep.
And next to that, a bust of the Lizard from the Amazing Spider-Man 1. And
Yes.
if you look at that thing, like kind of zoom in a little, you can really see his eyes there.
Yeah.
Pretty creepy looking, actually. This one I really liked. This is part of the tentacles from Dr. Octopus and Spider-Man 2. It's from Spider-Man 2 specifically, and of course his goggles. That one was awesome. We have the Daily Bugle.
Spider scores.
Spidey scores, absolutely.
Phrasing.
And we have another one with Spider-Man shows his true colors. Again, both of those from Spider-Man 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was definitely a highlight for me. This is the Spider-Man suit that Tom Holland wore in No Way Home. So this one was in No Way Home. They also had the Night Monkey suit from Far From Home in it as well. But
I would have loved if they had the integrated costume or even Iron Spider there.
That would have been pretty awesome. And I had seen some pictures, so I knew that this was there, but still seeing it in person is so awesome.
And I'll go on record here. I am not. I do celebrate the Iron Spider costume. I'm an Iron Spider apologist, but I love that suit.
And then one last one I wanted to throw in because it made me laugh when I saw it. Sega Genesis with the red cartridge from Maximum Carnage. I love this game and its separation anxiety. They had a whole little section that said basically just stuff devoted to Spider-Man video games. So overall, I'm really glad I got to go. I do hope I get to see it at least one more time before it is gone in October, and ideally without the kids so I can take a little more time, but it was fun.
Good. Well, thank you for sharing that, Brent, at that point. Glad you got to make it there on an unexpected trip there today. So, but all right. We will see you all next week for volume 176 of Marvel Alliance. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.